Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be talking about Zetas and the Zeta Crunch. This is something I think majority of players are feeling right now because of these Lightspeed bundles, or just because of the general way the game has been trending, where every character needs at least 2 Zetas now, and then obviously your Galactic Legends need 6. So how do you combat this? What do you do? Well, I'm here to answer those questions, but first we've got to thank my channel members for all of their continued support of this channel. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. It really, just makes it, I lose words for how thankful I am for you guys. If you're interested in joining, that link is below. These guys are also getting priority reviews on my roster review live stream that I'm hosting in a week's time at the time of recording. So November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing a special live stream where I'm raising money for the rehab center that my daughter attends. So stay tuned for more news on that. I do not yet have a link for where to donate for that. They only make it live the day of. So again, stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you for letting me share my family story in a video that is on my channel. So let's get in though. Let's talk about Zetas today. So Zetas are one of the biggest crunches we as players are experiencing right now. Unfortunately, the only way you can get Zetas is through fleet currency. If you're ever wondering why do I have 10,000 currency, it's just the way that I am. Right? Like I just have always saved that. I don't know why, but I just did. So right now I've got 125 Zeta mats, and I need like 100, I need like 200 to feel good right now, because I need to put 2 on Drogon, I need 6 for Leia, and I need 2 more for Captain Han and Rolo. So I need a lot of Zetas. In terms of where to get them, as I showed you, you can get them with the guild store here. Your Mark III raid currency, I would not recommend doing that. Daily login, fleet commander events, and then you've obviously got assault battles, packs, there's a lot of ways you can get Zetas, but there's not a lot of ways to increase the rate without spending money. They're one of those materials in this game where it's whale or just bide your time and be smart with them. So this is going to be focused towards the free-to-play and how to be smart with your Zetas. So the first thing you can do is avoiding luxury Zetas. Now, a luxury Zeta is a Zeta that goes on a character that does perform a purpose. The character does get better, but it's kind of like the difference between cloth seats and leather seats in a car. They're both seats, they both work, just one feels a heck of a lot nicer than the other one. And that at times, the leather seat will perform a function significantly better than the cloth seat. Another example, think of it like, a New York, a filet mignon versus like a, Delmonico steak. They're both steaks. One tastes a heck of a lot better than the other one, but really doesn't serve that much difference of a purpose, right? I mean, the filet mignon serves the purpose that you're going to enjoy it far more, but they're both going to feed you, right? So think of it like, your Dark Trooper Zeta here. With, if he has less than 3 stacks, he gains a stack when he uses this ability. 99% of the time, I never need this Zeta. 99% of the time, I never end up using this Zeta. There are times where I have used it and it's come in clutch, but other times it just isn't worth it. Next one, Colonel Starch Unique. This is one of those Zetas where it has purposes, but you don't really need to use it that often. It doesn't make that big of a difference, where he gains a little bit of protection, not a big deal. He does remove turn meter from all enemies for each active Empire ally, which gets doubled for Imperial Trooper allies. You don't need this to win. You don't need this in your Iden team. You don't need this in your Veers team. It can help, but it's not necessary. Mara Jade's another brilliant example. Her Infiltrate and Disrupt, gotta have this Zeta. But the one on Ultimate Predator, where it deals double damage to shocked enemies and Jedi, is nice to have, but it's not. Her purpose is to generate turn meter for Palpatine. That's the purpose of this Zeta, is to, is to generate that turn meter. So the damage is nice, but if you have to burn one of them, you're burning this one, right? Visas Mar, I mean, this isn't even a luxury Zeta. This is just like a bad Zeta. Just the reason I say it's luxury, I could see where this could be beneficial, but how often are you actually using a Starkiller team or Visas Mar in a team? Yeah, hi Dobby. No respect in this house. No respect. Anyway, like, how often are you using Visas Mar against Sith? I never am, so pointless Zeta. Another really good one I would say here is a great example of another luxury Zeta is on Grief Karga. Grief Karga's Zeta here on Bring Them In Cold, where the, at the non-Zeta level, You call your allies to assist, and if you have an active payout, you deal 10% more damage. And with the Zeta, you deal 30%, so an additional 20% of damage, you're dealing. That's pure luxury. Because if you're using this to beat non-galactic legend teams, a lot of times this is the second ability you're using to call the assist to just trigger your contract. That's all you're trying to do is trigger contract and use Mando to snipe somebody out. You're not using it to kill someone. The time where this one does come in handy is against Lord Vader, where that extra 20% damage can make a difference when calling those assists. But overall, in the grand scheme of Greef Karga, if you don't have that Zeta, you can still win plenty of matches. Does it get a little bit harder? Yes, but unless you're doing that Lord Vader fight or really punching up, you don't oftentimes need that Zeta. So those are luxury Zetas, right? You can avoid equipping them. Just avoid equipping those luxury Zetas for the time being. Obviously, when you come back around, sometimes you'll be like, hey, you know what? I would like that Greef Karga Zeta now. But for the time being, you can't afford to equip those things. You've got to be smart with your resources. Now, what I'll be kind of doing, another thing you can do is start gearing some characters who don't have any Zetas. Now, some of you are going to be like, well, Phil, that's pointless. I need these characters. They have the Zetas. Okay, well then, but think about that. Oh, I don't know what to gear next. Well, look at some characters who don't have Zetas. Your Magma Trooper here, who's going to be needed for the raid, does not need Zetas. So if you invested a little bit of gear in Magma Trooper for a bit, you don't need a relic in, but just invest a little bit of gear in him. Hey, you know what? He doesn't need a Zeta. Boom, good to go. Range Trooper is one of my favorite. This is a character I tell everybody, you should relic this character. He is so good. He is the key. He's the fourth most important Imperial Trooper. You can use him with Iden, or you can use him with Veers. Veers is where he shines because to get those extra assists, but he doesn't need a Zeta, and that makes him infinitely valuable. Imperial Commando and Gar Saxon. So Gar Saxon does have a Zeta. I did lie. He has a Zeta. Just pretend it doesn't exist, because this is actually trash, right? You do not need that Zeta. This is actually trash. The big thing with Gar Saxon and Imperial Super Commando, with this new Dark Side Mandalorian team coming into Galaxy of Heroes, they could be two characters if you're thinking about building that Maul team where investing in them makes a massive, massive difference. Massive shout out here to Shore Trooper. Shore Trooper does not need a Zeta, and he is very, very good. He's also got a pilot. He's also a pilot with our good friend Death Trooper. Now, Death Trooper does have a Zeta, but it's for all about Director Krennic, so very skippable. But I included Gar Saxon for more of the shock factor there. But Death Trooper, another great example of a character where he doesn't need that Zeta. He is a pilot, so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone with your Super Commando, Shore Trooper, Gar Saxon, and Death Trooper, where you're getting pilots. You're going to be able to equip gear to them, so you can gear these characters who don't have any. So there's a couple characters, and I'm obviously thinking about some of these, right, that I'm thinking of throwing some gear on. But what are the other ways that you can solve this Zeta crunch? And I'm going to show you things that I'm kind of thinking about as I'm playing this game. The next two things are kind of work on some factions where you've already invested the Zetas and you just need to match the gear with it. My Tuskens are a great example of this. Look at this, I've got 2 Zetas on Chieftain, 2 Zetas on Warrior. I went really hard for these characters. I was fully anticipating them being far more useful in terms of them being needed for some sort of character than they are. So that's why I've never gotten around to farming Tusken Warrior, and I kind of jumped the gun on the Zetas. But they've served their purpose for me in a lot of the conquests where I've kind of needed to get some Tusken feats at times. This conquest, I haven't used them as much because mine are very dependent on the data discs to be really good. But this is the kind of situation where if you have a faction like this where you've invested your time and resources into building the faction and you put Zetas on them, but maybe they're not relic levels, this would be a perfect time to do that. Take a little bit of a break from whatever you're doing, work on the gear for the characters you've invested Zetas into, and then as your Zeta stockpile grows from not having to constantly Zeta characters as you're gearing them, then you can get back into it. Another example would be my Night Sisters, where I'm mostly there. I do think I need one more Zeta on Marin up here. But overall, I've got the rest of the Zetas I need for this faction. I've got the rest of the Zetas I need. This is another one where I could go up and gear my zombie, and I don't need to worry about having to, lose Zetas out. So this is another one that's definitely on my... In terms of priority listing, I would put these guys above Tuskens right now, simply because of like I love an offensive team like them where take them up against some factions that I would potentially otherwise lose to. Because with Marin, maybe even equipping an Omicron if I really wanted to, they can do some good things. But even without the Omicron, they are fantastic. So there's another way that you can, as free to play, just start, if you have factions like this. And maybe you're like, well, Phil, I don't have factions. Okay, well, think of some one-offs. Think about your Jolie. Think about characters like a Barris or Droidica or B2 where you've invested gear in them. Maybe you built them for an event like the Malik event, or you just kind of built them up. Like my Barris has been gear 11 for eons. But like Droidica B2, I built them up for the General Skywalker event, and then I never really got around to having to relic them because I didn't need them at relics, and now I've kind of hit 10 million, and I don't know when I'll be able to relic those characters. But these would be other examples of how you could kind of start saving your Zetas a little bit. Pick out some of these tunes where you've got the Zeta, you just need to work on them. Different from the faction because, okay, I'm going to build Jolie and now I can build, use another Jedi team. Or I'm going to do my General Grievous team and actually make them good. So there's some other ways to think about that. Do these one-off characters. And then another thing I would say is maybe it's time to think about your characters like your Geos here. If you don't have these characters at relics, these are your 3 pilot Geos. Maybe it's time to start thinking about equipping some, relics on them. That you need to look for these spaces in your roster where you kind of have to balance stuff, right? And for me, it's about balancing the fact that as much as I would love to get like my entire Geonosian faction to relics simply because I think like their Omicron and Territory Wars is pretty decent. Speaking of luxury Zetas, the leadership Zeta on GBA is just not worth it, right? I'm pretty sure that's the one. It's just not worth it. But you look at these and you're like, well, Phil, why wouldn't you do GBA and Poggle for the Omicron and the leadership? Because these are the pilots. And that I use this faction far more as the pilots than I do other ways. So that's another concept to look at. Look at some of those pilots you have who, okay, I don't need the Zeta on them, but I just need them because their ship is good. So again, you could just go to your fleets and say, okay, where are some characters where I can equip some gear and actually get solid usage out of them? Scarif Rebel Pathfinder maybe would be on that list. Some of your Phoenix Squadron or, Geonosians, again, just look for those opportunities where you can build something that otherwise you don't have. Maybe work on some Relic 8s. For somebody like me, this is where I'm really thinking about. Is it time that I start focusing on Relic 8s? So take 2 Galactic Legends, take 3 Galactic Legends, move them up to Relic 8, and spend just my next few, spend a couple months just working on Relic levels. That I'm not really going to worry about trying to Zeta crazy amounts of characters, use my resources just for Relic levels to get, characters like these guys to Relic 8, or even characters like this to Relic 7. Again, the concept being I've already got their Zetas. They don't need more Zetas. They just need more of the gear. I can build up my stockpile of Zetas, and then I can start working on some of these other teams in the game. Because, let's just call it how it is. I need 2 Zetas for Drogon, 6 for Leia herself, and then I need 1 for Rolo and 1 for Captain Han to get through the event. So my next, how many Zetas are already decided. So now you're like, okay, well, Phil, what else would you be doing? Well, I need to start thinking about when I want to farm Jedi Knight Cal and Malicos and Seer and, Dark Trooper Gideon and who else is coming, Bo-Katan. And so I'm going to have to decide how to spend my Zetas in a way that's going to give me the best opportunity to build the best account possible while also ensuring that I can continue to improve. I still do need those Zetas. I can't, afford to not equip Zetas for, 6 months, but I need to also make sure that I'm giving my account the boost that it needs to keep it competitive with the current meta. So, that's the video on Zetas, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully this helps you. And again, like I showed, it's not that getting Zetas is necessarily hard. It's not hard to get Zetas. What's hard is to get them quickly. Again, you get them your fleet commander events, right? Daily logins. I would never do this. Conquest, you've got the challenges. Assault battles is a brilliant way. This is a really good way. Get some in Grand Arena. Obviously, you can whale on them. And then you do get them in Territory Wars, but you don't get a lot of them at once. It's not like it's a, oh, you're going to get 50 Zetas tomorrow. It's a long process, and it takes a while to build up that stockpile. That's it, guys. I love all you. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.